Hello, beautiful people, and welcome. In today's video, we will be going through our Chapter 3 practice test for Integrated Math 2. This is where we will be dealing with quadratics. We will be graphing and writing equations. Let's go ahead and get started. For our first question, it is asking us to graph the following functions. The first one we see is in vertex form. So you are required to have your formulas memorized. You have your vertex, your standard, and your x-intercept formula. So let's go ahead and write out our h and k's. Now remember, h is always opposite of what you see. K is for keep. And then these questions down here, we're going to answer after we graph. So for our vertex is h comma k. And remember, h is opposite, k is for keep. So for our h, we have a positive 1, opposite of what I see. K, I see a -3, I write a -3. Now remember, part of our formulas for vertex is that the x value is the axis of symmetry, and then the y value tells us if it's a min or max. So it doesn't matter if it's minimum or it doesn't matter if it's maximum, that value will be the y value. Depending on how we graph and depending on whether or not we have an increasing or decreasing function will be determined if we have a minimum or a maximum. Oh, let me straighten that out. There it is. Now if we take a look at this negative tells us we are going to be decreasing. So that means our function when we graph needs to be going down. So if we have a happy face, that means we went wrong. So let's start with our axis of symmetry, and to graph, axis of symmetry is at 1. So when you're drawing the axis of symmetry, you want to make sure you have a dotted line, not solid. Then we have our positive 1, -3, positive 1, 1, 2, 3, -3. That's our vertex. Now, in order to continue graphing, we have two options. We can either go straight to the y-intercept, or we can do a t-chart and do our points that way. So if we do a t-chart, I'm going to write in our vertex. Then you're going to choose either to go up or down. So I'm going to choose to go up. So 2, 3, 4. We pick up our calculator, and we'll type this into our calculator. Whenever you're typing this into our calculator, because we have a fraction, you want to put that fraction in parentheses. Then you want to input your x value, -1. Don't forget, let me erase this. Don't forget to square it, and then subtract 3, and then your outputs are going to go here. So, for example, we have parentheses, -1 divided by 2. Close it, that's 1/2, negative. Then we have an input of 2 minus 1, close it, square it, -3, so we have a -3.5. Now 3.5 is not the most difficult thing to graph, but also not the easiest because we are going to have to guesstimate what that half is. So let's see if 3 gave us something better. So again, I'm going to go up, I'm going to change my input from 2 to a 3, and it does give us something pretty. So here's our vertex. I'm going to write a V next to it. Here's a pretty point. And I'm going to stop there just because we get to solve for a y-intercept. It is asking us for a y-intercept. So I'm going to solve for y-intercept. Now for a y-intercept, you're going to replace x with 0. So I'm going to write a 0 in here. My input is now 0. And see what our value is. And our value is that -3.5. So that means at 0, -3.5, we're going to have a point. So let's go ahead and graph. So we already graphed our vertex. Next point I'm going to graph is that 3, -5. So here's 1, 2, 3, -1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to reflect that point. So 2 jumps, 2 jumps. And then at 2, here's 1, here's 2. 1, 2, 3.5, as well as 0, 1, 2, 3.5. So we don't really need to reflect here because it kind of happens automatically. But in the event that it doesn't, just go ahead and reflect your y-intercept, and we have our function. So let's go ahead and answer some questions. Microsoft over here calling me out for that typo. Don't worry about that. Does this function open up or down? Well, it opens down. What is the axis of symmetry? Remember, axis of symmetry comes from your x value. So we have x equals positive 1. Your vertex was at 1, negative 3. Did we have a minimum or did we have a maximum? Because it gave us a peak and the values are going down, we have a maximum. The y-intercept was at 0 and negative 3.5. Domain. So now domain and range for all of our functions, for all quadratics, these are going to be from negative infinity to positive infinity. You can also write all real numbers, and that will be okay. Now the range changes. Range is asking you for your y values, what's the tallest and what's the lowest number that it can be. The tallest number on our y value is going to be a negative 3. We know that from our maximum value. And then the lowest, well, we see these arrows. These arrows are going down to negative infinity. So that means for our range, we have from negative infinity with parentheses all the way to negative 3 with a bracket. The number gets the bracket because it is included. Infinity does not get a bracket because we cannot hold infinity. If I ask you to grab me 3 coffees, that's possible. If I ask you to grab me an infinity amount of coffee, that's not possible. So parentheses and brackets. Moving on to the second equation. This one is in standard form. Again, make sure you have your formulas memorized. Standard form, we need to find our axis of symmetry using a formula, negative b over 2a. So here's our a with the symbol, here's our b with the symbol, here's our c with the symbol. Now, if you are choosing to use a calculator to find your axis of symmetry, make sure that you have double parentheses here, otherwise your calculator will multiply instead of dividing. Let's plug some numbers in. We got a negative b, which is negative 8. Make sure you have a double negative here, divided by 2a, which is a negative 2. I'm going to choose to do this by hand. So we have a positive 8 divided by a negative 4. So that means we have a negative 2 as our x value. Remember, this is our axis of symmetry. Using our axis of symmetry, we're going to find our y value. This is going to be your min or your maximum number, max. To find our minimum or maximum number, you're going to take your originally given equation. You're going to replace our value of x, or our letter of x, and we're going to replace it with our negative 2 that we got in our first step with axis of symmetry. We're going to type that into the calculator. So we got negative 2 parentheses negative 2 squared minus 8 parentheses negative 2, close it, minus 9, we get a negative 1. So that means our y value is negative 1, and that is our minimum or our maximum. And we'll find out which one it is here in just a moment. The next thing we want is the y-intercept. Now, in standard form, the y-intercept is super duper easy because we just take the c value. 0, negative 9 is our y-intercept. Nothing really to solve here. You can replace all of your x's with 0, just like we did here. Standard form, there's not really a need. All you have to do is take your c value, that's your y-intercept. Let's sketch it out. Let's start with the axis of symmetry at negative 2. Here's our 0. So negative 1, negative 2. Make sure it's a dotted line, not a straight solid line. We wanted a straight dotted line. Then we have our minimum, maximum. Combination of these two are going to give you your vertex. So down here below, I'm going to say our vertex is at negative 2, negative 1. So when we graph it, negative 2, negative 1, here's our vertex. Next, we have our y-intercept, which is at 0, negative 9. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So here's our y-intercept. Reflect that over, so 2 jumps, 2 jumps. Then we have our sketch of our function. Let's answer some questions. Beautiful people, I am actually re-recording this as the audio did not record starting at B. So I'm going to be doing this really quickly and then picking up from where we left off. So for B, we have a standard form equation. So for the axis of symmetry, we have negative b divided by 2a, and that's equal to our x value. So we have our b, our a, and our c. Make sure you have parentheses around your b in the event that it becomes a negative. So in this case, it will be a negative 8 on the inside. 2a, negative 2 in parentheses. Now, some of you are choosing to use a calculator on this, which is fine. But if you're using a calculator, make sure that you have double parentheses in the denominator. Otherwise, your calculator will give you the wrong answer. I'm going to do this by hand. We have 8 over negative 4 gives us a negative 2. So this right here, this right here with the negative is your axis of symmetry. Now, what you do with that to find your y value, this is your minimum maximum value. There you go. And that is plugging in for your x value. So we solved for a negative 2, so we're going to place negative 2 in here. Now, with a calculator, all you have to do is plug that in exactly how you see it. So negative 2 parentheses negative 2 parentheses squared minus 8 parentheses negative 2, close it, minus 9, and we get an output of negative 1. Now, this is not your y-intercept. This is your y value for your min or your maximum. So does this function up or down? We don't know that yet. Axis of symmetry was at negative 2. The vertex is the combination of both of these, so we get negative 2 and negative 1. And then, does it have a minimum maximum? We're going to hold up on that. Now your y-intercept. When you have a standard form equation, the y-intercept is just your c value. So when we have our y-intercept, writing it down is going to be 0, comma, that number, in this case, negative 9. For domain and range, we're going to hold off on that too. So let's start out with our axis of symmetry at here 0, so negative 1, negative 2. And we have our vertex at negative 2, negative 1. Here's negative 2, negative 1. Here's our vertex. Then we have our y-intercept at 0, negative 9. Here's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then we're going to reflect that point. So 2 jumps, curve down. Does this open up or down? This went down. Did it have a minimum or maximum? This is a maximum. The domain. Now, the domain is going to be the same for all of our quadratics. It's going to be all real numbers, or you can write that as negative infinity all the way to positive infinity. Range will depend on how tall and how low we can go. So the tallest amount, the maximum we can have it, is at negative 1. The lowest it can go, because we have arrows, is negative infinity. So a parentheses around infinity and a bracket around negative 1. Moving on to the next one.
For question number 2, it's asking us to rewrite the following equations in vertex form. Now, we are giving you 2 different types of equations that we want in vertex form. This one here is in standard form. This one here is in intercept form. But what we want is vertex form. Vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. Make sure you have your formulas memorized. So for the first one, what we're going to do is we're going to solve for the axis of symmetry, and then we're going to solve for the vertex, or the y value, and then the vertex, and then replace our a value. So here's a, here's b, here's c. So to solve for the axis of symmetry, we're going to go negative b divided by 2a. So b is negative 1, a is negative 3. So we have 1 over negative 6, which means we have 1/6 negative as our axis of symmetry. Then we have the y value, which is our minimum maximum value. We're going to take the original equation. Now we do have a fraction, and that's okay. And plugging in that fraction, we'll let the calculator do the thinking for us. We're going to type it in exactly how we see it. So negative 3 parentheses negative 1 divided by 6, close it, square it, minus negative parentheses, negative 1 6, close it. Oh, I think I did too many negatives. Let's go back. I'm going to delete one of those negatives, making sure I type it in exactly how I see it. So I see a minus, then I see a parentheses, then I see a negative. Closing out, and then subtracting 8. Ooh, and that gives me an achy number. So this is one of those examples where you want to make sure that you don't do a decimal. You always want to leave your answer in fraction form. So converting this to a fraction, we're going to press this button that's second. We're going to press the PRB button, which is going to give us the answer from a decimal to a fraction, pressing enter. Now, when they give us this value of negative 7 11/12, they're giving us a mixed number. When we have fractions, we want them in improper format, meaning we want the number on top in the numerator spot to be larger than the number in the denominator on the bottom. So we're going to multiply and then add. Don't worry about the negative. The negative will just be there at the end. So we have 12 times 7. 12 times 7, that's 84. And then we're going to add 11 to that. And that gives me 95. So again, 12 times 7 plus 11, and that gives us a 95. Now, we do want a fraction, so we're going to take the original 12 in the denominator that we had, and we're going to write it underneath. Just keep it a fraction because that's what we want. And then the original negative, we're going to place it on negative 95 here. So that means our y value is negative 95 over 12. Now we're going to continue by writing our equation. I'm going to try to fit that in right over here. So in vertex form, we have y equals. Now we need an a value. Your a value is going to come from the original a value that you have in your standard form equation. So this negative 3 is going to just bring it down. Then we have our x minus h. So this axis of symmetry, this is our h value, this is our k value. So we have opposite of what we see, so type in positive 1 6, make sure to square it, and then minus 95 12ths as our answer. Moving on to intercept form. Same thing, just a little bit different because it has its own formulas. We're going to first identify your intercept. So we got positive 1, comma 0, and 8, positive, comma 0. We're going to find out what our axis of symmetry is by doing our own equation here, which is taking those two numbers, adding them, and dividing by 2. So we're going to have a positive 1 plus 8 divided by 2, which gives us 9/2. Once again, that's a fraction. Don't let that bother you. We can type that into the calculator. That's our axis of symmetry, which is also known as our h value. Copying down the original equation, we're going to solve for the y value. We have 3 times. We're going to plug in our x value or our h value. Now, when we do this, because it does have parentheses already, and inside we have to put a fraction, we're going to have to put double parentheses here. We call them double bubbles. So when you type this into the calculator, you're going to type it in exactly how you see it. So 3 parentheses, then another parentheses, 9 divided by 2, close one parentheses, minus 1, close the other parentheses. Open, open, 9 divided by 2, close it, minus 8, close it again. Press enter, and again, it gives you a decimal. We don't want a decimal, so we're going to convert that to a fraction, pressing second, PRB, and enter. Again, that gave us a mixed number of negative 36 3/4. So we're going to convert that. We're going to multiply and then add. So that means we're going to say 4 times 36, 4 times 36, which gives us 144. And then we're going to add 3 to that. And it gives us 147. We still need a fraction, so I'm going to take my original 4. I'm going to write it underneath. And then that original negative, I'm also going to place on that negative 147 over 4, 147. So how does our equation look like? This is our k value. Here's our h value. So y equals. Our a value is going to come from the original equation. In this case, it's 3. Then we have x minus h, so opposite of what we see h. I'm going to write a negative 9/2, square it, and then negative 147 over 4 as our k value, and that is our equation.
For question number 3, it is asking us to rewrite the following equations in standard form. So again, we need to know what our formats are. Standard form looks like, I'm going to squeeze that in here, ax squared plus bx plus c. And we understand that b and c can be negative numbers, so it can turn the plus into a minus. When you have vertex form in question number A, we will have to rewrite those bubbles twice. So those binomials of x minus 2, because it is squared, because it has a 2 here, we're going to write it twice. That negative 4 is still on the outside, that 3 is still on the outside. Now we're going to distribute, we're going to multiply this out. If you prefer box method, do box method. And we end up getting x squared minus 4x plus 4. We're still going to have that in a bracket or parentheses. We still have that 3 on the outside and that 4 on the outside. Distribute that 3 inward, and we're going to multiply. We have 3x squared minus 12x plus 12. And we still have that minus 4 here. So your very last step is to add these together. So you have 3x squared minus 12x, and then we do 12 plus a negative 4, which is a positive 8. Now they are asking us for an equation, so we have to make sure this equals a y, or since they gave us f of x, we can write f of x. That part doesn't matter as long as we have an equals a y or an f of x. Now for this one in intercept form, this one has already expanded in a way your 2 binomials. So you already see 2 bubbles here, you see 2 binomials, here you see 1, so here you had to write it out twice. This one we can just jump right in and multiply those out. So we have x times x is x squared, x times negative 8 is negative 8x, then we get a negative 1x and a positive 8. Negative times a negative is a positive. So we have, I'm going to change this to parentheses. You can keep it as brackets if you like. We get 9x negative plus 8. Ooh, excuse the bell. Hopefully that wasn't too loud. And then we're going to distribute that 3. We got 3x squared minus 9 times 3 is 27x. 8 times 3 is 24. Now because there is no k value here, not that it's 0, it's not 0. There is no k value in intercept form. We have a p, we have a q, there's no h, and there's no k in this type of format. Only in vertex form do you have an h and a k. So there's no adding here. It doesn't exist. And we can set it to g of x, or you can set it to y or f of x. That part doesn't matter. Now moving on to question number 4. Question number 4 is asking us to write the equation of the given function in intercept form. Now again, we do need to know what intercept form is, and that is y equals a times x minus p and x minus q. Now our p's and our q's are our x-intercepts. So here is an x-intercept, and here's another x-intercept. Here is our point. So that means we have a p and a q. Now, it doesn't matter which one you label p and which one you label q. The order doesn't matter. But when we write the equation, y equals a times x minus p, x minus q, putting it into the equation, that equation will take the opposite of what you see for p and for q. So when for p and for q, let me get rid of that x, because that x will be something else. For our point, we have an x and a y. So here's our x, here's our y. And we're going to replace our y and our x's with our x and y numbers. So let's go ahead and replace everything. Our y is negative 2. We're going to keep our a, that stays the same. Our x was negative 4. Our p was -5, so we write a +5, again, opposite of what we see for p. And then our x was -4, and our q was a +2, so I'm going to write a -2. When you're solving this for intercept form is a little bit easier in that this right here can be typed in the calculator. We want to type it in exactly how we see it. Don't worry about the a. The a is what we are solving for. Let me place that here. So we have parentheses, -4 plus 5, close it, open, -4 minus 2, close it, and we get a times -6. So now what we're going to do, we're going to divide by that number. And so I get a equals, now if you want to use a calculator, that's fine. Just know you can't have a decimal. So if I do -2 divided by -6, that gives me a very icky decimal. So if we press second, PRB, that will convert it to a fraction for us at 1/3. So how do we write our actual answer? So our answer is going to be, again, in intercept form, which is this form right here. We have y equals a was 1/3, x, p was -5, so I'm writing a +5, x, q was a +2, I'm writing a -2, and that is our answer for 4a. Doing exactly the same thing for the second one here. Let's label our p's and our q's. Here's our x-intercept. Here's another x-intercept. So that means this is our p and this is our q. We do have a point, and that point is 1 and -4, so we're labeling it x and y. Let's write out our equation. Y equals a times x minus p, x minus q. Plugging in, we have a -4 for y. A stays the same. X is a +1. P is 3, so we do opposite of what we see. X is 1. Q is 7. We do opposite of what we see with a minus. Again, we're going to calculate this using our calculator. If you want to do this in your brain, go ahead. You have my blessing. 1 minus 3, parentheses, 1 minus 7, close it, and we get 12. Now we are going to take that number that we just have, this 12, and that's the number we're going to divide both sides by. Again, if you want to choose to use a calculator, go ahead. But again, make sure to convert that to a fraction, and we get a -1/3. So how does our answer look like for this b? We get y equals, what's our a value? -1/3. We're going to keep our x's, so we got x and x. Then we plug in our p's and our q's. P was a +3, I'm writing a -3. Our q was 7, so I'm writing a -7, and that is our equation in intercept form. All right, now on question number 5, it's asking to write the equation for the given functions in vertex form. Once again, we need to know our formulas. And for our formulas, we have, I'm going to write it down below. So vertex form is y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. So when we write our answer needs to be in this format. To write our answer, we need two things. We need a vertex, we need a point. So the vertex is the one in the center. So here and here is our vertex. And then our point is whatever point is on the curve. So for this example, we have a point here. So our vertex is at -5 and -3. And our point was at -4 and -5. We're going to label our points h and k. So our vertex gets our h and our k. Our point gets our x and our y. I'm going to write out the vertex form. So we get y, let's see if it's going to work, y equals a times x minus h squared plus k. And replace our values. Our y is -5 times x, which is -4. H is opposite, so I see a -5. I write a +5. Square it. K is for keep, so we write a -3. Now this one's going to be a little bit more step and procedural because we cannot use a calculator here. So we're going to add 3, get rid of that k first so you don't end up making a mistake. So we get -5 plus 3, that is 2, negative. And we got that equals to A. -4 plus 5, that is a +1. So we want to do this in steps. So this step, we want to evaluate the inside of the parentheses before you square it. After that, we want to square it, which is 1 squared is just 1. And then whatever number we get there, that's the number that we divide by. Now, I am dividing by 1, which is a little bit silly. But if it wasn't 1, if this was a different number, you still have to divide. So in this case, our A is -2. This is not the answer. This is just our A value. Remember, they want it in vertex form, so this is the form that it needs to look at. So to write our answer, here's my answer box. We got y equals A is -2, x, h is -5, so we're writing a +5 for h. Make sure to square it, and then a -3 on the outside. All right, let's do one more. Our vertex is at -2 and -1. Our point was right here, and that is at -4 and +3. Make that sure. -4, +3, and then -2, -1. Again, label HK, X and Y. Write out your equation. Start replacing your letters. Our Y was 3. Our A, we're going to keep it the same. Our X was -4. So our Y, our X, our H do opposite of what we see. I see a -2, I write a +2. And then our K is a -1. Again, don't pick up your calculator. We're going to do this by hand. We got a +1 here, +1 here. So we get 4 equals, we got A times. If you need a calculator for this part, that's fine. Just make sure you evaluate first only the inside. So we got -4 plus 2, which is a -2. Then you want to square it. Now, when you square this, this is super duper important that you type in exactly what you see. So you have to put these parentheses around 2. Your calculator is smart, but you are smarter. Tell the calculator what to do. Otherwise, it will give you the wrong answer, and it will do it on purpose. So we got a parentheses, -2 parentheses, then square it, and that gives you a +4. So A times 4 equals 4. And so now we're going to divide by that number. So we are dividing by this 4. So A is equal to 1. So we are ready to write out our answer. Y equals A. If you want to not put 1 here, that's okay. Or if you choose to write 1, that's okay as well. I will accept both answers. Here's X. Our H value was a -2, so I'm writing a +2. Make sure it's squared. And our K value was a -1. And so we have our answer. Moving on to the last few questions. All right, you are about to dunk a basketball. You need to jump 2.5 feet in the air to dunk the ball. The height that your feet are above the ground is given by the function. H of t is equal to -16t squared plus 12t. What is the maximum height? And will you be able to actually dunk the basketball? So let's talk about what this is. Let's say here is our graph. Typically, this is our y. Typically, this is our x. Instead of using x and y, what they are using is they are using h and t. So instead of x, they're using t for time. And instead of y, they're using h for height. So when they're asking you for the maximum height, they're asking you for your y value. This right here is in standard form. A lot of these word problems, all you need to do is find the vertex, and a lot of the information will come from your vertex. So step number 1 is we're going to find the axis of symmetry, so -b divided by 2a. We have -b divided by 2a here. Here's our b value, which is 12. Here's our a value, which is -16. Again, if you're choosing to do this on a calculator, that's fine. We're going to put parentheses around that. They are not asking us to graph, so if you get a prettier fraction or a decimal, that is okay here, just because we are not graphing. When you're graphing or when you're writing an equation, that's different. So we get, that's icky. I'm going to convert that to a fraction. So we get 3/8 as our x. Now they are not asking for x. X would be time. They're not asking for time. They're asking for height. We need to find the y value. So step number 2 is you're going to take your original equation, write it out, leaving space for your x, and then you're going to place in that 3/8. So we got -16, parentheses 3 divided by 8, close it, square it, plus 12, parentheses 3 divided by 8, close it, equals, and we have 2.25. Now let's see if they are saying 2.5 feet in the air. So that means our height is in feet. This is your maximum height that you will be able to jump. Given the maximum height from your answer in A, will you be able to dunk the basketball? Why or why not? We need a maximum of 2.5 feet to dunk. They told us that here. We need to jump 2.5 feet. We can jump only 2.25 feet because that's our feet. That's our max value. So to answer the question, can we dunk the basketball? Can you dunk the basketball? Unfortunately not. No, you cannot do that. Our final question. The following equation represents a path of a donut hole that is being thrown by Mr. Amadeus, where x represents the time the donut is in the air and y represents the height of the donut. At what time does the donut reach its maximum height? So here, once again, let's go ahead and sketch this out. I'm not actually graphing. I'm just telling you what things are. Here's your x. Here's your y-axis. Again, they are using t for time, and they're using h for height. And it's asking you for the time. It's asking you for the x value of your vertex. So step number 1, let's calculate the x value. -b divided by 2a is your axis of symmetry, or your x value. Here's your a value, not the x, just the negative. Here's your b value. We don't really care about the c right now. So -b, that's 4, divided by 2a, that's -1. If you are choosing to do this on a calculator, you have to put double parentheses. I want to show you how that would look like. So it would look like -4, exactly how we see it, divided by parentheses 2, parentheses -1, close it, and then close it again. So we get a +2. Now this one here, it's not telling us the time units. Is it seconds? Is it hours? But since we are talking about throwing a donut hole, I'm assuming it's talking about seconds. I'm going to put seconds. On the test, I will be giving you units. So at what time does the donut reach its maximum height? At 2 seconds, it's going to reach its maximum height. Now it's asking you what is the height. So this is asking you for your y value. And this is your maximum that they're trying to find. So we're going to copy down the original equation, y equals -x squared plus 4x minus 2, replacing x with our x value, in this case 2. And I keep saying x, it is x on this. On the previous example, it was t, but it works exactly the same way. And we're going to type it in exactly how we see it, negative parentheses 2 parentheses squared plus 4 parentheses 2 minus 2, and I get an output of 2. Now again, they are not telling us the height. Is it in feet? Is it in inches? Again, since we're chucking a donut across the air, I'm going to assume it's feet just for the sake of this equation and this problem. But again, on the test, I will give you actual units. All right, beautiful people, that is it. Hopefully you did a very good job on this practice test. Your test is approaching. If you have any questions, please reach out. Bye.